"Children, why did you leave me?" said the feverish old woman abandoned on the road, but the rancher saw everything and decided to act. Let me know what you thought of this story by giving it a rating from 0 to 10 and tell me what city you're watching from. I really want to know if you enjoyed my story and get to know you better, so subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The December sun burned mercilessly over the dry lands of Caldera County, Texas, when Benjamin Hayes spotted the figure collapsed on the dirt road. At 35, the rancher had developed a keen instinct for recognizing when something was amiss on his properties, but on that Saturday morning, something different weighed on the stuffy air of the Texan backcountry. Benjamin pulled the reins of Thunder, his white horse, stopping a few meters from the woman sprawled in the red dust. She was a lady of about 67, her gray hair stuck to her sweaty face, her simple clothes torn and dirty. What struck him most were her chapped lips, constantly moving, murmuring incoherent words about children who had abandoned her. "Mom, are you all right?" Benjamin asked, dismounting carefully. There was something in the woman's fragile posture that awakened an immediate compassion in his chest, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Eleanor Vance opened her eyes with difficulty, the fever making her vision tremble. Through the fog of her confusion, she saw a young man in a leather hat, plaid shirt, and faded blue jeans. There was kindness in his brown eyes, something she hadn't seen in months. "My children. They threw me away," Eleanor murmured, trying to sit up. "Michael and Claire. They said I'm a burden, that the old papers I keep are useless." Benjamin felt a knot in his stomach. He had grown up without biological parents, adopted by a ranching couple who had already passed on. The idea of children abandoning an elderly mother deeply revolted him. "I'm taking you to my house," he said firmly. "You need medical care." "No, young man, I don't want to be a bother to anyone," Eleanor protested weakly. "I'm already enough of a weight on this world." But Benjamin had already made up his mind. Carefully, he helped the lady onto Thunder, holding her securely as they walked the 2 miles to the ranch headquarters. Throughout the journey, Eleanor continued to murmur about some Anthony, the love of her life, and about a son she had been forced to give up as a baby. The Santa Rita Ranch was a prosperous property with a 2-story main house, well-kept corrals, and cattle herds that stretched as far as the eye could see. Dolly Sanders, the 58-year-old housekeeper who had cared for the house for 2 decades, came running out when she saw Benjamin arriving with the stranger. "My goodness, Benjamin." "What happened?" Dolly asked, her experienced hands already assessing Eleanor's condition. "I found her collapsed on the road. She has a high fever and is delirious. Can you prepare the guest room and call Dr. Harrison, please?" Dolly nodded and helped carry Eleanor into the house. She had seen many difficult situations over the years, but there was something in that woman's fragility that touched her maternal heart. During the first 3 weeks of her recovery, Eleanor oscillated between moments of lucidity and episodes of mental confusion. In her lucid moments, she told fragments of her story to Dolly. She had been married to John Vance, a county clerk, and had 2 children, Michael and Claire. But there was another name that constantly escaped her lips: Anthony. Anthony was different, Eleanor would say, her eyes shining with a painful nostalgia. "He truly loved me. But my family didn't approve. He was poor, worked with cattle. So they forced me to marry John." Benjamin listened to these stories with growing attention. There was something familiar in the descriptions Eleanor gave of the region, details about properties and families that only someone very intimate with the area would know. Even more disturbing were the constant mentions of a son she had been forced to give up for adoption. "He would be your age now," Eleanor would say to Benjamin, observing him with a strange intensity, brown hair, kind eyes like yours. It was in the 4th week that the first twist occurred. Michael Vance, 42, and Claire Sanders, 38, showed up at the ranch demanding that their mother return home. Michael was a burly man with a calculating gaze, while Claire seemed more nervous and ashamed. "Mr. Hayes, we appreciate your kindness. But our mother needs to come back," Michael said, forcing a polite smile. "She has mental problems, you see. Says things that aren't real." "Mental problems?" Benjamin questioned, suspicious. "Dr. Harrison said she was just dehydrated and had a fever. Nothing indicates dementia." Claire shifted uncomfortably. "It's just... sometimes she confuses things. Talks about people who don't exist. Invents stories." Benjamin realized there was something deeper to this situation. The way Michael avoided direct eye contact, how Claire seemed genuinely distressed, and especially the way Eleanor had hidden in her room when she heard her children's voices in the living room. "She can stay here as long as she wants," Benjamin said firmly. "She's recovering well and is no trouble at all." Michael clenched his fists. "Sir, with all due respect, she is our responsibility. We don't want to abuse your hospitality." "It's not abuse when it's offered from the heart," Benjamin replied. "And from her accounts, it doesn't seem like you were taking very good care of your own mother." The tension in the air became palpable. Michael took a step forward, but Claire held his arm. "Michael, let her stay a few more days," Claire said quietly. She wasn't doing well at home anyway. After the children left, Eleanor came out of her room with tears in her eyes. "You shouldn't have done that," she said. "Michael can be dangerous when he gets angry." "Dangerous how?" Benjamin asked. Eleanor hesitated. He went through my papers. Said he was going to take care of my inheritance. But I think he sold everything without telling me. I'm afraid of what he might do." That night, as Benjamin reviewed some ranch paperwork, Dolly brought him a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table. "Benjamin, can I say something? This story about Mrs. Eleanor, there's something strange." "Strange how?" "She talked about the Hayes Ranch. Said she knew a man who worked here many years ago. A man named Anthony Hayes." Benjamin's blood ran cold. Hayes was his last name, but he had been adopted. His adoptive parents had always said they chose the name because it was nice, but they had never explained its origin. "Dolly, did you know my parents when they adopted me?" The housekeeper stirred her coffee with nervous movements. "Benjamin, there are things that are maybe better left in the past. Dolly, please, I need to know." She sighed deeply. "Your adoptive father, Sebastian, he once told me you weren't adopted from a normal orphanage. There was a man, a ranch hand who worked here for a while. He left a child in the couple's care when he had to leave. The world seemed to spin for Benjamin. This man, what was his name? Anthony Hayes." Benjamin was silent for long minutes, processing the information. If that were true, if Anthony really was his biological father, then Eleanor. "Dolly, do you think Eleanor could be?" "I don't know, Benjamin, but there are too many coincidences to be just chance." When Benjamin finally managed to sleep that morning, his dreams were filled with confusing images of a man in a hat he had never met, working with cattle under the same sun that now burned his own lands. He awoke with a disturbing certainty. His life was about to change completely, and the secrets Eleanor carried were just the beginning of a much larger truth he couldn't yet comprehend. The following days brought a strange routine to the Santa Rita Ranch. Eleanor had settled in as a constant presence in the kitchen, helping Dolly with small household tasks her trembling hands could still manage. Benjamin watched the old woman's every move, searching for signs that would confirm or deny his growing suspicions about her true identity. On Tuesday morning, while Benjamin was checking the cattle in the north pasture, he received a call that would change everything. It was Father Michael, the parish priest of the Church of the Rosary for over 40 years, a man who knew every family in the region as if they were his own children. Benjamin, my son, I heard you're taking care of a lady named Eleanor Vance. That's right, Father. I found her passed out on the road. Why? There was a long pause on the line. I need to talk to you in person. It's about your story, Benjamin. About things I've kept secret for a long time. The rancher's heart raced. Father, do you know something about my biological parents? Come to the church this afternoon. There's a conversation that should have happened a long time ago. Benjamin spent the rest of the morning restless, barely able to concentrate on his work. When he arrived at the church, he found Father Michael organizing some old documents in a room at the back of the temple. Sit down, Benjamin, the priest said, pointing to a wooden chair. What I'm about to tell you may be painful, but you have the right to know the truth. Father Michael opened a drawer and took out an envelope yellowed with time. Your father, Anthony Hayes, came to me in December of 1988. You were just 2 months old. He was desperate, said he couldn't raise you alone. Alone? What about my mother? Eleanor had been forced by her family to marry another man. John Vance was a well-established public official, while Anthony was just a ranch hand. Her family considered it a more suitable marriage. Benjamin felt the world spin. So Eleanor is really your biological mother, yes. She became pregnant with Anthony's child before the arranged marriage. Her family forced her to hide the pregnancy and give the child up after birth. Benjamin's hands trembled as he took the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter and a faded photograph of a young man holding a baby. Anthony made me promise that if anything happened to him, I would tell the boy the truth when he grew up. But the years passed. You seemed happy with the Hayes family, and I thought it was best to leave the past alone. Benjamin looked at the photograph. The man had features similar to his own, the same facial structure, the same determined eyes. What happened to him? Anthony worked in the region for a few more years, always from a distance, watching you grow up. But in 1992, he simply disappeared. Some say he went to Montana to work on a large ranch. We never heard from him again. When Benjamin returned home, his legs could barely carry him. He found Eleanor in the yard, watching the chickens peck at the ground. She looked up as he approached, and for the first time he noticed how her eyes were just like his. Mrs. Eleanor, we need to talk. She seemed to notice something different in his tone of voice. What is it, my son? The word son echoed differently this time. Benjamin sat beside her on the wooden bench under the mango tree. I spoke with Father Michael today. He told me about Anthony Hayes. Eleanor's face instantly paled. Her hands began to tremble, and she clutched the hem of her dress. Anthony, she whispered. How is he? Where is he? Mrs. Eleanor, Anthony was my father, and you are my mother. The silence that followed was deep and heavy with emotion. Eleanor covered her face with her hands and began to cry. A silent cry of decades of repressed pain. I always knew, she said between sobs. From the first day I saw you, you have his eyes, the same kind way of looking at people. Benjamin felt tears streaming down his face. All his life he had wondered about his origins, and now, at 35, he finally had the answers. Why did you never say anything? How could I? You had a family, a good life. I was afraid you would reject me, like my other children did. At that moment, Dolly appeared on the porch, carrying a tray with coffee. She stopped upon seeing the two crying and immediately understood what had happened. You found out, she said softly. Dolly, you knew? Benjamin asked. The housekeeper sighed and approached. I've suspected for weeks. Mrs. Eleanor has the same way of wringing her hands when she's nervous that you do, and she knew details about the ranch that only a family member would know. The three spent the rest of the afternoon talking, piecing together a 35-year-old puzzle. Eleanor told them about the months of hidden pregnancy, about the lonely birth at a distant relative's house, about the pain of handing her son into Anthony's arms, knowing she might never see him again. Anthony promised he would take good care of you, she said. He said he would find a good family, that you would have opportunities he couldn't offer. And after? How did you end up married to John Vance? My family said it was my only chance to regain my reputation. John knew about you, but he accepted the marriage anyway. We had Michael and Claire, but I could never love them as I should have. My heart was broken when I gave away my first son. When night fell, Benjamin insisted that Eleanor remain at the ranch permanently. She was his mother, and nothing in the world would make her leave again. But the next morning, Michael and Claire returned, this time with a much more aggressive posture. Michael carried papers in his hand and an air of determination that worried Benjamin immediately. "Mr. Hayes, I've brought documents here that prove our mother's mental incompetence," Michael said, holding out a folder. "She can't make decisions for herself." Benjamin examined the papers. They were questionable medical reports, signed by a doctor he didn't know, attesting to early-onset senile dementia. "These documents are fake," Benjamin said firmly. "They're official," Michael retorted. "And as her legal children, we have the right to decide where she lives. Children who abandoned her on the road to die." Claire finally spoke, her voice thick with guilt. "It wasn't like that. Michael said she was being a nuisance, that the neighbors were complaining about her forgetfulness." "What forgetfulness?" Benjamin asked. "She started talking about lost children, about some Anthony. Michael said it was just old-age fantasies." Benjamin looked at Michael with growing suspicion. "And you thought it was better to get rid of her instead of seeking proper medical help?" "Look here, rancher," Michael said, losing his composure. "You don't understand our situation at all. Our mother is a burden, and we have no obligation to carry this weight." "Burden?" Eleanor's voice came from the kitchen door. She had heard the whole conversation. "Is that how you see me, Michael?" Her son avoided his mother's gaze. "Mom, you need to understand that we're not in a position to take care of you." "But you are in a position to sell my house without telling me," Eleanor said, her voice gaining strength. "You thought I didn't know, but I found out." Claire's eyes widened. "Michael, you sold Mom's house." "It was necessary," he replied dryly. "The money will pay for a suitable home for her." "What home?" Benjamin asked. "A nursing home in the city, a proper place for people with mental problems." Benjamin felt anger rise in his chest. "Your mother doesn't have mental problems, and even if she did, a mother's place is with her family." "Family?" Michael laughed bitterly. "She was never a real mother to us. Always talking about this Anthony, always distant, as if she had lost something more important than us." The words struck Eleanor like daggers. She had lost something more important, her first son, given up by force of circumstance. And now she discovered that the children she raised never understood her pain. "Get off my property," Benjamin said, his voice low but filled with authority. "And take these fake papers with you." Michael took a threatening step forward. "This isn't over, rancher. I'll seek my rights in court." "Do that. I have better lawyers than you." After the two left, Eleanor collapsed on the living room sofa. "Benjamin, maybe it's better if I leave. I don't want you to have problems because of me." "Never," Benjamin said, kneeling beside her. "I spent 35 years without a mother. Now that I've found you, nothing in the world will separate us." That night, as Eleanor slept in the room that was now officially hers, Benjamin stood on the porch watching the stars. Dolly joined him with 2 cups of coffee. "Benjamin, there's one more thing you need to know about your father." "What?" "Anthony didn't leave by choice. He was threatened by Eleanor's family. They found out he was hanging around the area watching you grow and said they would do something terrible if he didn't disappear." Benjamin clenched his fists. "Terrible how?" "They threatened to hurt you and your adoptive parents. Anthony left to protect you all." A new wave of rage washed over Benjamin. His family had been destroyed twice by the same greed and prejudice he now saw in Eleanor's children. "Dolly, I need to find my father. He might be alive. Benjamin, it's been over 30 years. But I can try. Eleanor deserves to know what happened to him, and I need to meet the man who sacrificed everything for me." As the sun rose over the Santa Rita Ranch, Benjamin had made a decision that would not only change his life, but also unearth secrets that some people would prefer to keep buried forever. The decision to search for Anthony Hayes led Benjamin to hire a private investigator from Dallas. Oswald Riley, 54, was a former police officer specializing in finding missing persons. His reputation was solid, and Benjamin was willing to pay any amount to discover the whereabouts of his biological father. Meanwhile, life on the ranch had found a new, comforting rhythm. Eleanor flourished under the loving care she had never received before. She helped Dolly in the kitchen, tended to the herb garden, and in the afternoons sat on the porch telling Benjamin stories of her youth. Anthony was different from the other boys, she would say, her eyes shining with nostalgia. "He treated me like I was the most precious thing in the world. When he found out I was expecting you, he was so happy he cried." Benjamin absorbed every detail about the father he never knew. He learned that Anthony played guitar at town festivals, had a scar on his right arm from a cattle accident, and dreamed of having his own ranch one day. He said, "You would be a good man, that you would inherit his love for the land," Eleanor recounted. It seems he was right, but the peace of the ranch was shattered when Oswald brought the first news of his investigation. The investigator arrived on a rainy Thursday, carrying a folder with documents that would bring the past back in a devastating way. "Benjamin, I've found traces of Anthony Hayes," Oswald said, sitting in the ranch's living room. "But the news isn't good." Eleanor, who was knitting in the armchair nearby, dropped her needle. "What did you find out?" Anthony worked on several ranches in Montana between 1992 and 2010. He always used the same name, and his employers remembered him as a hard-working but melancholic man. He always talked about a son he had left behind in Texas. "And after 2010?" Benjamin asked, his heart tight. Oswald hesitated. "He settled on a ranch in Rondale. The owner, Mr. Jake Moore, said that Anthony fell gravely ill. A heart problem. He spent the last years of his life caring for the property's horses. The silence in the room was broken only by the sound of rain hitting the window. Eleanor had turned pale, and her hands were trembling. "When?" she whispered. "Anthony passed away in 2018, Mrs. Eleanor. He's buried in the cemetery in Rondale." Tears streamed down Eleanor's face like a silent waterfall. Benjamin knelt beside her, holding her fragile hands. "But there's something more," Oswald continued. "Anthony left some things with Mr. Moore. He said they were to be given to his son, if he ever came looking." Oswald opened the folder and took out a small carved wooden box. "Mr. Moore kept this for 5 years, waiting." Benjamin took the box with trembling hands. It was made of hardwood, with delicate carvings of horses running through fields. When he opened it, he found a photo of himself as a child playing in the ranch yard, a small toy guitar, and a yellowed letter. "He had a picture of me?" Benjamin asked, astonished. "Mr. Moore said that Anthony made a trip to Caldera County every year in December. He would watch you from a distance, take pictures secretly, and return to Montana. He did this for 26 years. Eleanor sobbed louder. "He never forgot me. He never forgot you." Benjamin carefully opened the letter. The handwriting was simple but filled with emotion. "My son, if you are reading this, it's because you have finally learned who your father is. I have spent my whole life watching you grow, proud of the good man you have become. Your mother, Eleanor, was the love of my life. We couldn't be together, but you are the proof that our love was worth it. Take care of her when I no longer can. The guitar was mine, and now it is yours. Play our songs for her. I love you, my boy. Your father, Anthony." Benjamin's tears joined Eleanor's. 35 years of questions had been answered, but the price was discovering he was too late to meet the man who had loved him so much. "There's one last thing," Oswald said gently. Mr. Moore said that Anthony mentioned that Mrs. Eleanor's family had a secret, something about hidden money, an inheritance that should have been hers. Eleanor raised her tear-reddened eyes. What inheritance? Your father, Benjamin's grandfather, owned several properties. When he passed away, your brothers divided everything among themselves, claiming you had lost your rights for having lost yourself with Anthony. My brothers died years ago, Eleanor said, confused. Yes, but their children are still alive, and one of the properties they took is the exact land where Michael's company operates today. Benjamin felt a new fury rise in his chest. Michael built his company on land stolen from his own mother. According to the documents I obtained, the property should have been divided equally among the 4 siblings. Eleanor never received her share. That explains a lot, Benjamin said. His desperation to get his mother away, the fake papers, the forced sale of her house. Eleanor seemed lost. I didn't even know I was entitled to anything. My parents disinherited me when they found out about you. They couldn't do that legally, Oswald explained. And now, with the right documents, you can claim what is yours. The following week, Benjamin hired the best law firm in the region to file a lawsuit against Eleanor's cousins and against Michael himself. The lawyers uncovered a web of corruption and document forgery that went back decades. Dr. Frederick Castillo, the lead attorney, came to the ranch personally to present his findings. Mrs. Eleanor, you are the legitimate owner of 3 properties in the region, including the one that now houses your son, Michael's company. The estimated value is about $15 million. Eleanor nearly fainted at the news. 15 million? Furthermore, we have evidence that Michael forged your signature multiple times to sell properties you didn't even know you owned. He could be arrested for fraud. I don't want my son to go to jail, Eleanor said immediately. I just want justice. Mom, Benjamin said gently, Michael needs to pay for what he did. He stole your life, your dignity, your history. That same day, Claire showed up at the ranch unannounced. She was visibly shaken, with deep, dark circles under her eyes and crumpled clothes. Benjamin, I need to talk to you both, she said, crying. I've discovered terrible things about Michael. Eleanor took her daughter in her arms, despite all the hurt. What happened, my dear? Michael isn't my biological brother, Mum. I found some papers at his house. I was adopted when I was 3. You took me in when my real parents died in an accident. Another revelation shook the family. Claire was not Eleanor's biological daughter, but an orphaned child she had raised with motherly love. That doesn't change anything for me, Eleanor said, caressing her daughter's face. You have always been my girl. But it explains why Michael always treated me differently, Claire sobbed. He found out the truth years ago and blackmailed me into helping him with his schemes. He said if I told you anything, he would reveal that I wasn't your real daughter. Benjamin felt another piece of the puzzle fall into place. Claire, do you have proof of Michael's schemes? I have documents, recordings, everything. I couldn't bear to be his accomplice anymore. With the evidence brought by Claire, the case against Michael became irrefutable. Within days, the court froze his assets and ordered the return of all stolen properties. But Michael would not accept defeat easily. The night before the decisive court hearing, he showed up at the Santa Rita Ranch completely unhinged, carrying an old shotgun and making desperate threats. "You've ruined my life," he yelled at the ranch gate. "I'll make you pay." Benjamin went out to confront him, but Eleanor held him by the arm. "Let me handle this," she said, with a strength that surprised everyone. The 67-year-old woman walked to the gate, looking into the eyes of the son who had betrayed her. "Michael, you are my son, even after everything you've done," she said with a firm voice. "But your choices have consequences. You can shoot me, you can try to hurt me, but that won't change the fact that you lost your family to greed." The gun trembled in Michael's hands. For a moment, the lost son seemed to re-emerge, and he lowered the shotgun. "Mom, I didn't want it to come to this," Then hand over that gun and take responsibility for your actions. Michael looked at Claire, who watched from the porch with tears in her eyes, then at Benjamin, who remained protectively by Eleanor's side. Finally, he let the shotgun fall to the ground and knelt, crying as he hadn't since childhood, "Forgive me, Mom. Forgive me for everything." When the police arrived to take him away, Eleanor held her son's hand one last time. "Michael, it's never too late to start over. When you get out of prison, you will have a family waiting for you." That night, as the storm passed and the stars began to shine again over the Santa Rita Ranch, Benjamin played Anthony's guitar for the first time. The simple, melancholic notes echoed across the porch, where Eleanor and Claire listened in silence. It was the music Anthony used to play for Eleanor when they were young, the same melody she hummed to baby Benjamin in the few weeks they had together. Now, after decades of separation, pain, and secrets, the family was finally reunited under the same music that had once connected them. But there was still one last revelation waiting for them, a truth that would not only change the family's future, but also honor in an unexpected way the memory of the man who sacrificed everything for love. 2 months after the events that changed their lives forever, the Santa Rita Ranch had transformed into a true home. Eleanor, now the legal owner of a considerable fortune, had decided to invest the money in expanding Benjamin's property and creating a shelter for elderly people abandoned by their families. "I want no one my age to go through what I went through," she would say, watching the construction of what would be the Anthony Hayes home. "And I want your father's name to be remembered for something beautiful." Claire had moved to the ranch permanently, taking on the coordination of the social project. The discovery of her origins, far from distancing her from Eleanor, had strengthened the bond between them even more. Michael was serving his sentence in a work release program, working on a nearby ranch during the day and returning to the correctional facility at night. Eleanor visited him every week, bringing homemade food and words of hope. But it was on a March morning, when Mr. Jake Moore arrived unexpectedly at the ranch, that the biggest revelation of all came to light. The old rancher from Montana, 78, had traveled over 1,000 miles to personally deliver something that would change the perception of everything that had happened. "Benjamin, my boy, I have one last thing from your father to deliver," Mr. Moore said. Sitting on the porch with an old leather suitcase, "Anthony made me promise I would only deliver this if you came to Montana in person. But at my age, I thought it best that I come to you." Eleanor approached curiously, while Dolly served coffee to the visitor. Mr. Moore opened the suitcase with reverential care, as if it were a treasure chest. "Anthony was not just an ordinary ranch hand," he began. "What no one knew is that he spent 40 years saving money with a specific goal." From inside the suitcase, Mr. Moore pulled out several bank envelopes and a folder with documents. "Your father saved every penny he earned his entire life. He never spent anything on luxury, lived simply, all to leave an inheritance for you." Benjamin took the documents with trembling hands. They were bank statements, showing small but consistent monthly deposits over 4 decades. The final amount left him breathless, $2,400,000. "But there's more," Mr. Moore continued. "In 2015, 3 years before he passed, Anthony bought a ranch here in Texas, a property that bordered yours." Eleanor covered her mouth with her hands. "Clear Creek Ranch?" "Exactly. Anthony bought it in your name, Benjamin. It's been registered at the courthouse for 5 years, waiting for you to take possession." Benjamin staggered to his feet. Clear Creek Ranch was a 500-hectare property he had always dreamed of buying. It was the most fertile land in the region, with pure water springs and ideal pastures for cattle. "How did he afford that?" Benjamin asked. "Anthony found out the old owner was going bankrupt. He offered to pay in cash with the money he had saved over the years. The man accepted on the spot." Mr. Moore pulled another envelope from the suitcase. And there's this too, a letter he wrote shortly before he passed, with specific instructions. Benjamin opened the letter with reverence. Anthony's handwriting, now familiar after the first letter, trembled slightly, betraying the weakness of his final days. My dear son, if you are reading this, it's because you have finally discovered who your father is. Clear Creek Ranch is my way of asking for forgiveness for the years we couldn't live together. I want you to use it to raise cattle, grow hay, do everything you've always wanted. But there is one condition. I want you to marry in the chapel I had built in the center of the property. When you find a woman you truly love, marry her there and think of me. It is my early wedding gift. And take care of Eleanor. She suffered as much as I did with our separation. You deserve to be happy together. With all my eternal love, Anthony Hayes. The silence that followed was deep and filled with emotion. Eleanor cried softly. Claire held her hand, and Dolly wiped her eyes with her apron. Benjamin looked out at the vastness of his lands, now doubled by a father who never stopped loving him. There's one last surprise, Mr. Moore said, smiling through his own tears. Anthony had a house built on the new ranch, a house with 3 bedrooms. One for you, one for Eleanor, and one for the grandchildren he hoped to meet one day. That afternoon, the whole family went to see Clear Creek Ranch. The house was simple but cozy, built in the colonial style Anthony knew Eleanor loved. In the center of the property, a small stone chapel stood under a century-old tree with a simple altar and carved wooden pews. He built all this thinking of us, Eleanor murmured, observing every detail of the chapel, even far away, even suffering. He never lost hope that one day we would be a family. Benjamin walked to the altar and found a small bronze plaque, Anthony and Eleanor Hayes Chapel, for the love that never ends, even when separated by fate. Dad, Benjamin whispered to the wind that rustled the tree's leaves, thank you for everything. 6 months later, the chapel witnessed its first wedding. Benjamin had met Mary Claire, the new veterinarian in the region, a 32-year-old woman who fell in love not only with him, but with the whole story of love and sacrifice that surrounded his family. Eleanor, radiant in her light blue dress, walked the bride down the aisle, taking on the role of mother she had always dreamed of playing. Father Michael, now 85 but still lucid, conducted the ceremony with tears of joy in his eyes. Anthony would be proud, he said during the blessing. His love built all of this, the reunited family, the prosperous land, the future full of hope. Michael, who had received parole for good behavior, was present at the ceremony. He'd spent months working on the construction of the Anthony Hayes home as part of his sentence, and the honest work had changed his perspective on life. Mom, he said to Eleanor during the party, I ask for forgiveness for all the years I wasted on anger and greed. I want to be part of this family again if you'll have me. Eleanor hugged him tightly. You have always been my son, Michael. You always will be. The Anthony Hayes home was inaugurated the following spring, welcoming 20 elderly residents who had been abandoned by their own families. Eleanor, now 68, had found her true calling, caring for people who had experienced the same pain she had. Every person I welcome here is a way of honoring the love that Anthony and I had, she would tell the volunteers. It's my way of turning pain into something beautiful. Claire took over the coordination of the home, showing a natural talent for administration that surprised everyone. Michael, now working honestly as the property manager, had rebuilt his relationship with his family and found peace in hard work. Dolly, promoted to general supervisor of all the properties, remained the heart that kept everything running. 40 years taking care of this family, she would say with pride. And now I get to see it grow and prosper. On the eve of the first Christmas they would all spend together, Benjamin went to the chapel alone for a moment of reflection. Mary Claire was 3 months pregnant, and soon Anthony would be a grandfather, even if only in spirit. "Dad," Benjamin said, kneeling before the altar, "you did it. Your family is reunited, prosperous and happy. Your grandson or granddaughter will grow up knowing your story, knowing that true love always finds a way." When he left the chapel, he found the whole family waiting for him in the yard. Eleanor was holding a new guitar, identical to the one Anthony had left him. "It's your Christmas present," she said, smiling, "so you can teach our future grandchildren to play their grandfather's songs." Benjamin took the guitar and began to play the melody that Anthony used to play for Eleanor. Under the stars of the Texan backcountry, 3 generations gathered to sing the songs of a man who turned sacrifice into love, separation into reunion, and pain into hope. Mary Claire placed a hand on her still small belly, whispering to the baby, "You're going to grow up in a family where love conquers all, my little one. Where people know that family isn't just blood, it's choice, it's care, it's forgiveness." And so, at the Santa Rita Ranch and Clear Creek Ranch, 2 properties that now formed a family empire built on true love, the story of Anthony and Eleanor found its happy ending. Not the ending they dreamed of as youths, but the ending their hearts deserved, a family united, prosperous, and full of love, carrying into the future the certainty that true love never really ends, it just transforms and multiplies through the generations. The legacy of Anthony Hayes was complete: an honorable son, a reunited family, and a love that transcended time, distance, and even the final separation, proving that some loves are eternal and that true sacrifice always finds its reward. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story, giving it a score from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.